Hi, this is Rubad Khan, and welcome to the first lecture of Think Programming. And this is where we will start solving problems. The very first problem we are going to solve is a very simple problem where we have to write a program that takes an input from the user and prints it back. So before we rush to code, there are some tools we need to do, and they are we need to find out the tasks. We need to write down or draw the scenario with the expected outputs. We have to solve those tasks individually with our logic, with mathematics, common sense, whatever required, and then testing each task before combining them and before coding. And remember, all this thinking and solving must be done on paper so that we can visualize if our thinking is actually converging to the expected output or deviating from the output. I will be stressing on solving on piece of paper because brainstorming on paper has many benefits in the long run when we will be solving more challenging problems. We will see that we will be getting too overwhelming, in many cases impossible to design and solve inside our head. As I said, if we jot down on piece of paper, we can see them with our eyes, and it becomes easy to find out the mistakes and troubleshoot them. Now let us solve. This problem basically has two tasks. First, taking an input and then printing it. Now, if I draw this scenario and the expected output, it will look like something like this, where we take an input from the user and our program takes the input and then prints it. So now let us do the brainstorming. Let us ask ourselves these questions. How does a program take an input? Where to store the input and how to print? And before answering to these questions, please make sure that you spend some good amount of time understanding the question and pointing out the tasks and correctly drawing it. Okay? It's very important that the diagram you draw is correct. Now, solving those three questions. How does a program take an input, where to store the input, and how to print? For now, let's say computer programs take input using built-in ways called methods, and we will be focusing on methods later in the series. So this method allows a user to input an item. After the user inputs the item, the programming language stores it in a box, and we call that box a variable. One box can store one piece of data. If we want to store a new data in the same box, the old one will be replaced. And just like taking an input, there are methods to do the printing. These printing methods print a solid value or a value inside a variable. Now let us draw what we have learned so far. So over here, I've drawn both the diagrams. This diagram on the left is what is expected, and this is the diagram we drew after reading the question and doing the brainstorming. So we will take an input from the user using the input method, which will store that input inside a box, and we call it v. And using the printing method, we will print whatever is inside the variable v. And this is our program. Now, this diagram from brainstorming matches exactly what we expected. So this means that our design is correct. Now, when the design is complete, we will code exactly according to our design. So the first thing we need to do is we need to call the input method, which will ask the user for giving an input. And when the user gives an input and presses enter, The input function or input method will store that input in a variable. And finally, we'll have to uh, call the print method so that the input from the variable gets printed. So these are the three lines that describe what we have drawn over here. And now if we want to convert, so these three lines can be converted to any programming language you want. This is an example of a Python code that's doing exactly doing the same thing. So variables are given names. So X is the name of the variable. Okay. They are given names because a program might have multiple variables and we name them so that we can identify. So input is the name of the input method, and uh, methods end with brackets so that we don't confuse them with variable names. Finally, this is the print method that prints whatever inside the variable x. And this equal sign in programming language does not hold the same value as mathematics. In programming languages, equal sign means we are storing the right hand side element in the left hand side variable. So this is our first program, and this was a very simple program that we solved. I hope we understood how we plan. This video series will focus on planning, brainstorming, problem solving. Thank you very much.